What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses walks into what she thinks is a routine interview, only to find herself facing a host determined to tear her down on live television? The clash between Scarlett Johansson and Joy Behar on The View became the most talked about moment in daytime TV history, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why security had to escort someone off the set. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral out of control when egos collide and cameras are rolling. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe how this unfolds. The morning started like any other at the View studio. Scarlett Johansson arrived early, her publicist briefing her on what was supposed to be a light promotional segment for her upcoming film. The actress had done hundreds of these interviews, always maintaining her professionalism even when hosts asked the same repetitive questions. She settled into the guest chair, adjusting her elegant black blazer as the makeup artist applied final touches. 5 minutes to air, called out a production assistant, and Scarlett could see Joy Behar shuffling through note cards at the host's table. Something about Joy's demeanor seemed different today, more intense than usual. The other hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and Sunny Hostin, were chatting casually, but Joy remained focused on her papers, occasionally glancing up at Scarlett with an expression that could only be described as predatory. The show's theme music began, and the familiar opening played out as cameras swept across the studio audience. Whoopi delivered the standard welcome, introducing the day's topics and guests. When Scarlett's name was mentioned, the audience applauded warmly, but Joy's smile seemed forced, almost mechanical. "We're thrilled to have Scarlett Johansson with us today," Whoopi said, gesturing toward their guest. "She's here to talk about her new thriller, but I have a feeling we might cover some other ground too." Scarlett nodded graciously. "Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to be here." "Well," Joy interjected, her voice cutting through the pleasantries like a knife, "I'm sure our audience would love to know about more than just your movie. There are some questions that have been floating around about your recent career choices that I think deserve answers." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Scarlett's publicist, standing just off camera, shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't part of the agreed-upon interview topics. "I'm sorry," Scarlett said, maintaining her composure but with a slight edge creeping into her voice. "What specific questions are you referring to?" Joy leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with the anticipation of someone about to spring a trap. "Well, let's start with the elephant in the room. Your decision to take on certain roles that many people feel you had no business playing. Don't you think there's a pattern here of you inserting yourself into stories that aren't yours to tell?" The other hosts exchanged glances. This was clearly not the direction they had planned for the interview to take. Sunny looked particularly uncomfortable, while Sarah seemed to be trying to catch Joy's attention to steer the conversation elsewhere. Scarlett took a deep breath, her media training kicking in. "I think every actor considers the roles they take very carefully. I've always tried to approach my work with respect and authenticity." "Respect and authenticity," Joy repeated, her tone dripping with skepticism. "That's interesting, because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like opportunism. Taking roles that could have gone to actors who actually share the background of the characters you're portraying." "Joy," Whoopi tried to interject, sensing the interview was veering into dangerous territory. "Maybe we should—" "No, Whoopi," Joy cut her off sharply. "This is exactly the kind of conversation we should be having. We talk about representation and diversity all the time on this show, but when we have someone sitting right here who's part of the problem, we're just going to pretend everything's fine?" Scarlett's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "I understand that representation is important, and it's a conversation worth having. But I don't think ambushing someone during what was supposed to be a promotional interview is the right way to have it." "Ambushing?" Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is journalism, sweetheart. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be sitting in that chair." The condescending "sweetheart" hung in the air like a slap. Scarlett's eyes flashed, and for the first time since the interview began, her professional mask slipped slightly. "I can handle tough questions just fine," Scarlett replied, her voice cooler now. "What I have a problem with is being lectured by someone who clearly came into this conversation with an agenda rather than any genuine interest in dialogue." "An agenda?" Joy's voice rose slightly. "My agenda is holding people accountable. My agenda is asking the questions that matter instead of just lobbing softball questions about your latest movie." "Then ask me real questions," Scarlett shot back, leaning forward slightly. Ask me about the craft. Ask me about the industry. Ask me about the actual work. But don't sit there and pretend this is some noble pursuit of truth when what you're really doing is trying to create a viral moment for your show." The studio audience was dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether they should keep rolling or cut away. Joy's face was flushing red, clearly not expecting such direct pushback. "Excuse me?" Joy said, her voice reaching a pitch that made several audience members visibly cringe. "Did you just accuse me of exploiting this situation for ratings? I'm saying that if you wanted to have a serious conversation about representation in Hollywood, you would have told me that's what we were doing before the cameras started rolling," Scarlett replied firmly. "Instead, you ambushed me on live television, which tells me this is more about the spectacle than the substance." Sarah tried once again to redirect the conversation. "Maybe we can talk about how the industry has evolved and—" "No," Joy interrupted again, now fully committed to the confrontation. "I want to hear Scarlett explain why she thinks she can just take any role she wants without considering the impact on marginalized communities." Scarlett stared at Joy for a long moment before responding. "I think you're making a lot of assumptions about my decision-making process and my values based on incomplete information." "Incomplete information?" Joy scoffed. "The information is your filmography. The information is the pattern of choices you've made throughout your career. And you've appointed yourself the judge of those choices? Someone has to be." The words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. The other hosts looked mortified, the audience was squirming in their seats, and somewhere in the control room, producers were probably having heart attacks. But neither Scarlett nor Joy seemed willing to back down. The silence that followed Joy's declaration was deafening. Scarlett's eyes narrowed as she processed what had just been said, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made everyone in the studio sit up straighter. "So you've appointed yourself the judge of my choices," Scarlett said slowly, each word deliberate. "Tell me, Joy, what qualifies you to make those judgments? What's your background in acting? What roles have you turned down for the sake of representation?" Joy's face went from red to purple. "I don't need to be an actor to recognize problematic behavior when I see it." "Problematic behavior," Scarlett repeated, leaning back in her chair with a look that could have melted steel. "You know what I find problematic? A talk show host who thinks she can publicly shame a guest without having done even basic research into their actual positions or charitable work." "This isn't about your charity work," Joy snapped. "Isn't it?" Scarlett's voice rose for the first time. "Because if you had done your homework, if you actually cared about the issues you're pretending to champion, you would know that I've spent years supporting organizations that promote diversity in film. You would know that I've used my platform to amplify marginalized voices. You would know that I've turned down roles specifically because I felt they should go to other actors." Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Scarlett wasn't finished. "But you don't know any of that, do you? Because this isn't about education or progress or meaningful dialogue. This is about you needing to feel morally superior to someone, and you picked me as your target today." "How dare you?" Joy said, her voice shaking with rage. "How dare you come on my show and lecture me about moral superiority when you're the one who—" "Your show?" Scarlett interrupted, looking around at the other hosts. "I'm sorry, I thought this was The View, not the Joy Behar show. Are Whoopi, Sarah, and Sunny just decorations, or do they get to participate in this ambush too?" Whoopi cleared her throat, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "Let's all take a breath here and—" "No, Whoopi." Joy cut her off again, this time with such vehemence that Whoopi actually recoiled. "I'm not going to sit here and let this privileged actress turn herself into the victim." "Privileged," Scarlett said with a bitter laugh. "There it is, the magic word that's supposed to end all discussion. Yes, I'm privileged. I'm successful. I'm well paid. I have opportunities that many people don't have. But that doesn't mean I forfeit my right to be treated with basic respect, and it certainly doesn't give you the right to attack my character based on your own assumptions." "Attack your character?" Joy stood up now, her voice reaching levels that had audience members covering their ears. "I'm asking you to take responsibility for your actions. And I'm telling you that your approach is counterproductive and hostile," Scarlett replied, also rising from her chair. "If you want to have a conversation about representation, then have it. But don't pretend this is anything other than a performance designed to make you look good at my expense." The production assistants were now frantically gesturing to the control room. Several audience members had their phones out, clearly recording what was happening. The other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. You want to talk about performance? Joy's voice cracked slightly. Your whole career is a performance. Playing characters that aren't yours, telling stories that aren't yours, and then acting surprised when people call you out on it. Scarlett stepped closer to the host table, her composure finally showing real cracks. You know what, Joy? You're right about one thing. I am performing right now. I'm performing civility in the face of someone who invited me here under false pretenses so she could publicly humiliate me. I'm performing patience with someone who clearly has no interest in an actual conversation. False pretenses? Joy shrieked. Everything I'm saying is legitimate criticism. Legitimate criticism would involve asking questions and listening to answers. Scarlett shot back. What you're doing is making accusations and then getting angry when I don't immediately confess to whatever sins you've decided I've committed. Sarah tried one more time to intervene. Maybe we should move on to talking about Scarlett's new film. We're not moving on to anything, Joy declared, pointing a finger at Scarlett, not until she acknowledges the harm she's caused. The harm I've caused? Scarlett's voice was incredulous now. Joy, do you hear yourself? You're talking about harm while you're literally trying to destroy someone's reputation on live television based on your own personal grudges. Personal grudges? Joy was practically screaming now. This isn't personal. This is about justice. Justice? Scarlett laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about justice? Let's talk about the justice of ambushing someone who came here in good faith. Let's talk about the justice of using your platform to bully someone instead of having a meaningful conversation about the issues you claim to care about. Joy slammed her hand down on the table so hard that Sarah's coffee cup jumped. Don't you dare call me a bully! Then don't act like one, Scarlett replied without missing a beat. The words hit Joy like a physical blow. For a moment, she was speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. When she finally found her voice again, it was barely controlled rage. Get her out of here, Joy said to the production staff, her voice low and dangerous. Get her out of here right now. Excuse me? Scarlett turned to look at Joy fully. You're having me removed because I won't agree with your assessment of my character? I'm having you removed because you're disrespectful and you refuse to take accountability. Scarlett stared at Joy for a long moment, then looked at each of the other hosts in turn. Whoopi looked mortified, Sarah looked like she might cry, and Sunny was staring at her hands. This is unbelievable, Scarlett said, her voice now quiet but carrying clearly throughout the studio. You invite someone onto your show, attack them personally, refuse to listen to their responses, and then have them removed when they don't capitulate to your demands. Security, Joy called out, not taking her eyes off Scarlett. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set, looking deeply uncomfortable with the situation they'd been called into. The audience was now openly murmuring, some people standing up to get a better view of what was happening. Scarlett looked at the security guards, then back at Joy. This is who you really are, isn't it? When you can't win an argument with words, you just use your power to silence the other person. Get her out, Joy repeated, her voice shaking. Scarlett gathered her purse and stood up straight, her dignity intact, despite everything that had just happened. I don't need security to escort me out. I can walk out on my own. She turned to face the audience, many of whom were now standing and some of whom had started applauding. Thank you all for witnessing this, she said clearly. Remember what you saw here today. As Scarlett walked toward the exit, Joy couldn't help herself. That's right, walk away, just like you always do when someone calls you out. Scarlett stopped dead in her tracks. Scarlett turned around slowly, and when she faced Joy again, there was something different in her expression. The professional mask was completely gone now, replaced by something raw and honest that made even the security guards take a step back. Walk away like I always do? Scarlett's voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the studio. Joy, I've been sitting here for 15 minutes trying to have a civil conversation with you while you've done nothing but attack me. I've answered your questions, I've defended my positions, and I've tried to treat you with respect despite the fact that you've shown me none. Joy crossed her arms, clearly thinking she had regained the upper hand. And now you're running away instead of facing the truth. The truth? Scarlett walked back toward the set, her heels clicking on the studio floor. You want to talk about truth? Let's talk about the truth of what just happened here. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Even the cameramen seemed frozen in place. The truth is that you invited me here under the pretense of promoting my film, then ambushed me with accusations that you never intended to discuss in good faith. Scarlett continued, her voice gaining strength. The truth is that when I didn't immediately agree with your characterization of my career, you became hostile and abusive. I wasn't abusive, Joy protested, but her voice lacked conviction. You interrupted your own co-hosts multiple times when they tried to steer this conversation in a more productive direction, Scarlett said, gesturing to Whoopi, Sarah, and Sunny. You called me sweetheart in a condescending tone. You refused to listen to anything I said that didn't confirm your preconceived notions about who I am and what I represent. Joy's face was flushed again, but this time it seemed more from embarrassment than anger. I was trying to hold you accountable. No, Joy, you were trying to humiliate me, Scarlett replied firmly. There's a difference between accountability and public shaming, and what you did here today was the latter. Whoopi finally found her voice. Scarlett, maybe we can start over and… Whoopi, with all due respect, there's no starting over from this, Scarlett said, turning to address her directly. Your co-host just called security to have me removed because I wouldn't accept her assessment of my character. That's not journalism, that's not activism, that's just abuse of power. Joy stepped forward, her voice rising again. You think you can just waltz in here and act like you're the victim? I think I can expect to be treated with basic human decency when I accept an invitation to appear on a television show, Scarlett replied. Apparently, that was too much to ask. You want to talk about decency? Joy's voice was getting shrill again. What about the decency you owe to the communities whose stories you've appropriated? Scarlett closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her patience from some deep reserve. When she opened them again, her voice was calm but deadly serious. Joy, I've tried multiple times to engage with you on the substance of those concerns. I've acknowledged the importance of representation. I've explained my own efforts to support diversity in the industry, but you're not interested in any of that because it doesn't fit the narrative you've decided to tell about me. That's not true, Joy said, but she sounded less certain now. Then prove it, Scarlett challenged. Ask me a genuine question about my work or my positions and actually listen to the answer. Don't interrupt, don't lecture, just listen. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since the interview began, she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Sarah cleared her throat and spoke quietly. Maybe we should just end the segment here. No, Scarlett said firmly. I want Joy to respond. She spent the last 20 minutes telling me and your audience how wrong I am about everything. Now I'm giving her the chance to have the actual conversation she claims she wanted to have. All eyes turned to Joy, who looked around the studio as if searching for an escape route. The cameras were still rolling, the audience was watching, and her co-hosts were staring at her expectantly. Joy started, then stopped. I think you should take responsibility for your choices. That's not a question, Joy. That's another accusation, Scarlett pointed out. And I've already addressed the question of responsibility multiple times. You just didn't like my answers. Joy's shoulders sagged slightly. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to acknowledge that what happened here today was inappropriate, Scarlett said. I want you to acknowledge that you invited me here in bad faith and then tried to use your platform to humiliate me when I didn't conform to your expectations. I was doing my job, Joy said weakly. Your job is to interview guests, not to berate them, Scarlett replied. Your job is to facilitate conversation, not to shut it down when it doesn't go the way you planned. Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice heavy with disappointment. Joy, I think we need to take a commercial break. No, Joy said suddenly, her voice sharp again. I'm not apologizing to her. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Joy had just acknowledged that there was something to apologize for, even as she refused to do it. Scarlett nodded slowly. And there it is, the truth that Joy was so interested in pursuing. She knows she was wrong, but she's too proud to admit it. I wasn't wrong, Joy protested, but the fire had gone out of her voice. Then why are you being asked to apologize? Scarlett asked quietly. Joy looked around the studio one more time, her eyes finally landing on the audience. For the first time, she seemed to really see their faces, to notice their expressions of shock and disappointment. Some were shaking their heads, others were openly frowning at her. "This interview is over," Joy declared, pulling off her microphone and dropping it on the table. "You're right," Scarlett agreed. "It is over, but not because you're ending it. It's over because you never intended to have a real interview in the first place." Joy stood there for a moment, clearly wanting to have the last word but unable to think of anything to say that wouldn't make things worse. Finally, she turned and walked off the set, leaving her co-host to deal with the aftermath. Scarlett watched her go, then turned back to the remaining hosts. "Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny, I'm sorry you had to witness that. You deserve better from your co-host." Whoopi looked exhausted. "Scarlett, I apologize for what happened here today. This is not how we normally conduct interviews." "I know it's not," Scarlett replied gently. "I've been on this show before, and it's always been professional. This was something else entirely." She picked up her purse again and looked out at the audience one final time. "Thank you all for your attention today. I hope what you witnessed here gives you something to think about regarding how we treat each other in public discourse." As Scarlett walked off the set with her head held high, the audience burst into sustained applause. Some were even standing, clearly showing their support for how she had handled an impossible situation. Behind her, the three remaining hosts sat in stunned silence, the weight of what had just happened settling over them like a heavy blanket. The cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds before finally cutting to commercial, but the damage was already done. The most explosive confrontation in daytime television history was over. But the conversation about what had happened was just beginning. Joy Behar had gotten the viral moment she seemed to want, but not in the way she had planned, and Scarlett Johansson had shown the world exactly what grace under pressure looks like. What did you think of this incredible showdown? Did Scarlett handle this situation the right way, or should she have responded differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more incredible celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere else.